Have you ever given your whole heart to someone only to feel like they shattered it without a second thought? Have you ever stayed awake at night, staring at the ceiling, replaying every conversation, every laugh, every promise, and wondering how it all turned into silence? If you have, then you know the kind of pain that leaves an invisible scar, the pain of betrayal, the pain of being hurt by someone you trusted more than anyone else. And let's be honest, it's not just the hurt that cuts deep, it's the unanswered questions, the confusion, the voice in your head that whispers, "Why wasn't I enough?" But here's the truth most people don't tell you. The problem is not you. The problem was never your worth. The problem lies in someone who couldn't see the treasure standing right in front of them. Human psychology proves something powerful. When someone takes you for granted, they convince themselves you'll always be there. They believe your love, your attention, and your forgiveness are endless. But the moment they realize they were wrong, the moment they see your strength instead of your tears, that is when regret takes over. Right now, you might be in the middle of that storm. You might feel broken, angry, or lost. And I want you to hear this. That feeling you carry, that heaviness in your chest, is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign of how deeply you are capable of loving. The ability to feel pain this deeply means you also carry the ability to rise even stronger. Psychology shows us that people who suffer deeply can grow into the strongest, most unshakable versions of themselves, because pain, when you face it, becomes fuel. Ask yourself this: do you really want the person who hurt you to know they broke you? Or do you want them to see you standing taller than ever, untouched by their absence? The answer lies not in screaming, not in begging, not in endless explanations. The answer lies in your calm strength, because nothing unsettles a person more than realizing they no longer have power over you. That is the moment regret begins to creep into their mind. And that's what this video is about. Not about feeding your anger, not about playing games, but about understanding human nature so deeply that you can walk away with dignity, while leaving behind a message that echoes louder than any argument ever could. The kind of message that makes them sit alone, in silence, questioning their choices. The kind of message that makes them regret losing you, not because you begged them to come back, but because you showed them you will never accept less than you deserve. Now listen carefully, because what I am about to share with you isn't just advice, it's a psychological truth. People regret the most not when they see you crying, but when they see you healed. They regret the most not when you need them, but when you prove you don't. That is why the text I will reveal later in this video has the power to shift everything. Not because it's angry, not because it's dramatic, but because it is simple, calm, and filled with self-respect. It shows them you have learned. It shows them you have grown. And it shows them you are untouchable. But here's the catch. You have to stay with me until the very end to hear it, because if I just gave you the text right now without guiding you through the psychology behind it, it would lose its power. Words are just words until they are backed by understanding. And the real reward for you isn't just sending one text. The real reward is walking away from this pain with your power restored, your confidence unshaken, and your future brighter than ever. So if you stay with me until the last word of this video, you will not only know the one text that makes him regret hurting you, you will also carry the mindset that makes you unstoppable long after this chapter is over. So let's begin here with you. Take a deep breath, because what you are about to discover is not just about making someone regret. It's about reclaiming the part of yourself you thought you lost. It's about transforming heartbreak into strength. And it starts with a decision that from this moment on, you will rise. You will not let someone else's weakness define your value. You will not chase after someone who showed you their true colors. Instead, you will become the kind of person whose silence, whose growth, and whose strength is impossible to ignore. Stay with me, because by the end of this, you will understand not only the power of one text, but the power of your own worth. And once you grasp that, nothing and no one will ever break you the same way again. Regret is one of the most powerful emotions a human being can feel. It is heavier than anger, deeper than sadness, and more haunting than fear. Why? Because regret lives in the mind like a shadow that never leaves. It follows people long after the moment has passed, whispering reminders of what they lost, what they destroyed, and what they can never get back. And here's the truth. You don't need to chase someone to make them regret hurting you. You don't need to fight, explain, or prove yourself. Regret does not grow in the noise of conflict. It grows in silence. It grows when they see the strength of someone they thought would always need them. Human psychology is simple in this way. People only value something once they realize it's gone. It's the scarcity principle. When something is abundant, people take it for granted. When it disappears, suddenly they feel the weight of its absence. This is why people who hurt you often seem unaffected at first. They convince themselves you will always wait. They tell themselves they still have time to come back, that you'll always answer, that your love is a permanent resource. But when reality hits, when they see your silence, your strength, your refusal to return, that is when regret burns the deepest. Think about it. The human brain is wired to seek comfort and avoid loss. Losing comfort feels like losing part of yourself. That's why psychologists call regret a cognitive dissonance. It's the painful clash between what someone did and what they wish they could undo. And the stronger your self-worth becomes, the more powerful this clash is in their mind. Because when they hurt you, they expected you to crumble. But when you rise instead, they are forced to face themselves. Regret works in stages. At first, they deny it. They tell themselves it doesn't matter. They distract themselves. They try to justify their choices. But no distraction is strong enough to silence the human mind when it knows it has lost something valuable. Slowly, the weight grows heavier. And here's the key. Regret is not born from seeing you broken. Regret is born from seeing you shine after they thought they dimmed your light. Imagine for a moment what happens when someone who betrayed you sees you standing tall. Imagine the confusion in their mind when they expected tears, but instead they see peace. That confusion becomes self-reflection, and self-reflection becomes regret, because nothing haunts a person more than realizing they underestimated the strength of someone they hurt. There's a reason the most haunting regrets in life are tied to people, not possessions. We rarely regret losing things. We regret losing people who mattered. We regret the opportunities to love that we destroyed through selfishness. And the human brain has a way of replaying those regrets over and over again in the quiet hours of the night. That's when the silence speaks louder than any words you could ever send. This is why dignity is your greatest weapon. When you choose silence over chaos, self-respect over begging, healing over revenge, you create the conditions for regret to grow in their mind. It's not about punishing them. It's about elevating yourself. And the higher you rise, the smaller they feel. That is the natural law of human psychology. People regret most when they realize they no longer have the access they once abused. But there's something even deeper. Regret also reveals truth. It reveals who they really are and what they truly valued. Some people will feel regret because they lost control, not because they lost love. Others will feel regret because they finally see the love they dismissed. You cannot control which one it will be, but you can control what you do with your power. You can choose to hold your head high, knowing their regret is not your responsibility. It is their burden to carry, not yours. And here is the secret that most never understand. Regret is not created by your anger, your arguments, or your attempts to make them see. Regret is created when you stop giving them what they expect. They expect you to fight. They expect you to beg. They expect you to crumble. When you do none of those things, when you choose silence, growth, and strength, you give them something their mind cannot escape. The haunting question, what if I hadn't hurt them? What if I hadn't walked away? Or what if I had valued them when I had the chance? That question is more powerful than any speech. It echoes in the quiet spaces of their life. It appears in their moments of loneliness. It grows stronger every time they see you moving forward without them. And that is when regret transforms into a storm inside their mind. So remember this, you don't need to force regret into someone's heart. You don't need to prove your value to make them see. The psychology of regret will do the work for you. Your silence, your strength, your decision to rise, that is the seed. And once it is planted, it grows whether they want it to or not. And when it does, it will not just remind them of what they lost. It will remind them that you were never weak, never broken, never disposable. You were always the treasure they were too blind to see, and now it is too late. Anger is the reaction they expect. When someone hurts you, they imagine the shouting, the endless questions, the desperate messages. They imagine you pouring out your pain, giving them the proof that they still hold power over your emotions. That is why anger rarely creates regret. Anger only confirms to them that they still matter, that they still control a part of your heart. But silence is different. Silence confuses the human mind. Silence forces reflection. Silence speaks louder than any words could ever scream. Think about it. When you argue with someone, they can fight back. When you cry, they can comfort or dismiss you. When you beg, they can reject or accept you. Every reaction gives them a role to play, a script to follow. But when you give them nothing, when your response is absence instead of reaction, they are left with only themselves. And the hardest person to face is always yourself. That is the weight of silence. It puts the mirror in front of them and leaves them to confront what they see. Human psychology proves this truth again and again. The withdrawal of attention is more powerful than any confrontation. Why? Because attention is the fuel of human ego. The moment you stop feeding someone your energy, their ego begins to starve. And when the ego starves, the mind starts searching for answers. Why are they silent? Why haven't they reacted? Did they move on? Did they stop caring? Did they realize they deserve better? These questions grow louder in the silence than they ever could in your words. Silence is not weakness. Silence is controlled strength. It is the decision to rise above chaos instead of drowning in it. When you choose silence, you choose dignity. You choose to no longer give someone access to your heart, your time, or your peace, and that decision shakes them more than your anger ever could, because anger tells them you are still tied to them. Silence tells them you have already begun to untie the knots. Let's go deeper. The human brain is wired to crave patterns. It thrives on predictability. When someone hurts you, they predict your reaction. They believe they know exactly how you will respond. But when you break that pattern, when you give silence instead of drama, you disrupt their expectation. That disruption forces them into self-reflection. It makes them question their assumptions, their choices, and their worth in your life. And that questioning is the birthplace of regret. Imagine this moment. They pick up their phone expecting a storm of messages, but the screen is empty. They expect confrontation, but they are met with peace. That emptiness, that quiet begins to echo. It makes them wonder what you are doing, where you are, who you are becoming without them. And every time they don't see your name appear, the silence becomes louder, heavier, more unbearable. That is the true voice of regret, spoken not by you, but by their own mind in the space you left behind. Psychologists call this the attention withdrawal effect. The less you give, the more they crave. The moment you stop chasing, their brain begins to chase the memory of you. Silence transforms you from something they dismiss to something they can't ignore. It shifts the power dynamic completely. They no longer control the narrative. You do, and you control it not by shouting, but by refusing to play their game. But let's be clear, silence is not about pretending. It is not about playing hard to get. It is about truly valuing yourself enough to no longer waste words where they are not respected. That's why silence carries such weight. It is not emptiness, it is full of meaning. It tells them without a single word that you have moved beyond their reach, that you refuse to be defined by their actions, that you have stepped into a strength they can no longer touch. Here's the paradox. The more you try to explain yourself to someone who has already hurt you, the less they listen. But the moment you stop explaining, stop chasing, stop proving, that is when they start to hear, not your words, but the silence. Silence becomes a message they cannot escape because it lives in their own mind, and no one can run from their own thoughts. So understand this, your silence is not just an absence of words. It is a declaration. It says, I will not give you the satisfaction of seeing me break. I will not waste my strength on someone who wasted my trust. Or I will rise quietly, powerfully, and without you. That is why silence shakes people to their core, because it leaves them with the one thing they cannot control, the realization of what they lost. And here lies the beauty. You don't have to shout to be heard. You don't have to fight to win. Silence is the language of the strong. It is the language of dignity. And it is the language that turns hurt into power, pain into growth, and betrayal into regret. So when you are tempted to break your silence, to send that angry text, to demand answers, remember this truth. Your silence is already saying everything. It is already doing the work. It is already planting the seed of regret in their mind. And that seed will grow not because of what you said, but because of what you chose not to say. Silence is powerful, but sometimes silence must be broken, not with anger, not with pleading, not with endless explanations, but with words so sharp in their simplicity that they cut deeper than any argument. Because words, when chosen with strength, have the power to close a chapter forever. Words can transform pain into dignity, and the right words, delivered at the right time, can turn regret into a storm inside the mind of the one who hurt you. Think for a moment about how much power words carry. A single sentence can heal a heart. A single sentence can destroy trust. A single sentence can stay in someone's memory for years, replaying over and over, shaping how they see themselves. Human psychology tells us that the mind holds on to certain words far longer than it holds on to actions. We forget what people did, but we never forget how their words made us feel. That is why the words you choose now matter so much. Most people make the mistake of sending words from weakness. They text out of desperation, hoping for closure, hoping for validation, but those words never carry power. They only give power away. Weak words make the other person feel justified. They make them believe they were right to treat you the way they did. But strong words, calm, direct, final, strip away that illusion. Strong words remind them of the value they lost without begging them to see it. There is a psychological principle called the law of impact. It states that the more concise and unexpected a message is, the stronger it stays in the mind. That is why long paragraphs of pain rarely create guilt. They only overwhelm and allow the other person to dismiss what you're saying. But one short, strong line can live in their thoughts for years. That is the power of carefully chosen words. Consider this. When you send a message filled with anger, they don't hear your pain. They only hear your attachment. But when you send a message filled with calm dignity, they hear something far louder, the sound of finality. The mind fears finality because it forces the realization that there is no going back. That realization is where regret is born. Words, when used from strength, become a mirror. They show the other person not who you are, but who they failed to see. They reflect the truth they tried to ignore. They reveal your growth, your clarity, and your refusal to stay in places where you are not respected. And the moment they read those words, their mind begins to replay every mistake, every moment they took you for granted. The most haunting words are not the ones that scream, "You hurt me." The most haunting words are the ones that say, "I have grown beyond you." Because those words take away their power completely. They no longer get to define the story. They no longer get to control the ending. You control it with one line that shuts the door they thought would always be open. Think of words like keys. Weak words lock you inside your pain. Strong words unlock your freedom. And freedom is the greatest proof of your strength. When you choose words that set you free, you also create the conditions for their regret. Because people only realize the weight of their actions when they see you walking away, not chained by their choices, but liberated by your own. Here's another truth psychology reveals. The brain remembers emotional triggers far more than neutral ones. If your words are calm yet carry deep finality, they trigger an emotional response that cannot be erased. Even years later, they may remember that one line you sent, the line that told them you would never accept that kind of treatment again. That memory will rise in their mind during their weakest moments, haunting them with the thought of what they lost. But remember this, your words are not about them. They are about you. They are not a weapon of revenge, but a declaration of strength. When you choose your words wisely, you reclaim the narrative. You transform the story from one of betrayal to one of empowerment. You show yourself and them that you are no longer a prisoner of what happened. You are the author of how it ends. And this is why the right words are more powerful than any fight. Fights fade. Arguments get forgotten. But one sentence spoken with strength becomes a scar in the memory, a scar that whispers, you can never undo what you lost. So understand this deeply. Silence creates space, but words can close the door. Silence unsettles, but words finalize. And when the words come from a place of calm, they carry more power than 1,000 angry paragraphs ever could. Choose words that do not beg. Choose words that do not fight. Choose words that declare your worth. Because when you do, you not only plant regret in their heart, you also give yourself the gift of closure. You release yourself from the need to explain, the need to argue, the need to be understood. You walk away knowing that your final words carry dignity, strength, and truth. And that, more than anything else, is the power of words. Words carry power, but just as the right words can build strength, the wrong words can strip it away. Many people make the mistake of sending messages in the heat of emotion. Messages that do not create regret, but instead confirm weakness. If you want to rise above the pain, if you want your words to carry weight, you must first understand what not to text. The first mistake is texting out of anger. Anger feels powerful in the moment. It feels like fire burning in your chest, demanding to be released. You might want to send a message filled with accusations, insults, or blame, but anger does not create respect. Anger only reveals attachment. When you send angry words, the other person does not think, I hurt someone valuable. Instead, they think, I still have control over their emotions. And that belief protects them from regret. That is why anger never works. It feeds their ego instead of starving it. The second mistake is begging for answers. Messages like, why did you do this to me? Don't you care? Can't you just explain? Seem harmless, but they weaken your position. They turn your strength into a question mark. They show the other person that you are still seeking closure from them, when the truth is closure never comes from the one who caused the pain. Closure comes from within. The human mind respects clarity, not confusion. The more you ask them to explain, the less powerful you appear in their eyes. Another mistake is trying to prove your worth through words. Messages like, you'll never find someone who loves you like I did, or one day you'll realize what you lost, may feel like a way to remind them of your value. But here's the reality. Your worth does not need explanation. The more you try to convince someone of your value, the more you hand them the power to define it. Psychology teaches us that true value is felt, not argued. If they could not see it when you gave it freely, they will not suddenly see it because of a text. And the more you try to convince them, the more they believe they were right to walk away. Then there is the temptation to send messages of guilt. Lines like, after everything I did for you, this is how you treat me, or you'll regret hurting someone who gave you everything. These words might sting for a moment, but they do not create deep regret. Why? Because guilt fades quickly when it comes from the outside. Real regret only grows when it comes from within. If they feel guilt, it must be their mind, not your message, that plants the seed. Forced guilt becomes defensive. Self-realized regret becomes unforgettable. One of the most common mistakes is sending endless paragraphs. People pour out their soul in long messages, believing that if they explain every detail, the other person will finally understand. But psychology proves the opposite. The human brain does not process long explanations during conflict. In fact, the longer the message, the easier it is for the other person to dismiss. They skim through, ignore most of it, and walk away without feeling the weight of your pain. Length weakens impact. Brevity strengthens it. Another trap is pretending to be unaffected with false words. Some people text things like, I don't care anymore, or you meant nothing to me. But deep down, both you and they know it isn't true. Fake detachment lacks power because the truth always leaks through. Real strength is not in pretending the pain never existed. It is in showing that the pain no longer controls you. Authentic calm always echoes louder than forced indifference. And perhaps the most damaging mistake is sending a message to get them back. Messages that say, I miss you. I can't live without you. Please give us another chance. These are not words of power, but words of surrender. They do not create regret. They create comfort. They assure the other person that you are still waiting, that no matter what they did, you will always be there. And when someone feels they can always return, regret never grows. Regret only comes when they realize the door is no longer open. The truth is simple. Every text you send carries a message about your worth. Angry texts say, you still control me. Or begging texts say, I still need you. Guilty texts say, I can't move on without you. Long paragraphs say, I am desperate to be understood. But the right words, the words of calm strength say, I value myself too much to stay where I am not respected. That is the message that haunts the mind. That is the message that plants regret. So guard your words carefully. Do not waste them on anger. Do not waste them on explanations. Do not waste them on convincing someone of a truth they refuse to see. Save your words for strength, not weakness, because in the silence you hold and in the rare words you choose to send, your power becomes undeniable. And when that power speaks, it will not just remind them of what they lost. It will remind you of what you gained, freedom, clarity, and the courage to never settle for less again. You now know what not to say. You know the traps that weaken your power and give them control over your emotions. But the moment you remove anger, begging, guilt, and endless explanations, what remains? The answer is the message that carries true strength. The one text that does not cling, does not chase, does not demand, but instead closes the chapter with dignity. This is the text that plants regret deeper than any argument ever could. The message is simple. It does not need many words because strength is not found in length. Strength is found in clarity. And the text that carries the most weight is this: thank you for teaching me what I will never accept again. Why does this one sentence cut so deeply? Because it does three powerful things at once. First, it acknowledges the pain without begging for sympathy. It makes clear that you saw what happened, you felt the wound, but you are no longer defined by it. Second, it reframes the entire experience as a lesson. Instead of you being the broken one, you become the one who grew stronger. Third, it ends the conversation. It gives no opening for argument, no invitation for debate. It closes the door with finality, leaving them alone with their own thoughts. Psychology explains why this works. Human beings are wired to seek validation and control. When you send angry words, you validate their power. When you beg, you hand them control. But this text removes both. It tells them, I have taken my power back. I have taken the lesson and I am walking away. Nothing unsettles the human mind more than realizing they no longer hold influence where they once did. This text also reverses the story. Instead of them seeing themselves as the one who ended things, your words frame you as the one who took the higher ground. You define the ending, not them. And endings are powerful. People remember the way a story closes more than the way it began. By sending this message, you control the final memory they will carry of you, not as someone shattered, but as someone strong. Think about what happens in their mind when they read it. At first, confusion. They expected anger or longing. Instead, they find calm strength. Then comes discomfort, because your words imply growth, which forces them to face their own lack of growth. Finally, regret, because your message makes it clear that while they lost you, you gained wisdom. They are left with emptiness while you walk away with clarity. And here is the beauty. You are not attacking them. You are not insulting them. You are not dragging yourself down to their level. You are simply stating a truth. You will never again accept the kind of treatment they gave you. That truth echoes in their mind like a bell they cannot unhear. It reminds them that their actions taught you to rise higher, and that rising meant leaving them behind. This message works because it is both firm and final. It is impossible to twist or argue with. If they try to reply with excuses, your words have already closed the door. If they try to argue, they are only revealing their own guilt. If they stay silent, it is because they cannot fight against a truth delivered with such calm strength. Either way, you win, not by overpowering them, but by refusing to engage in the battle at all. But remember, the real power of this message is not just in sending it. The real power is in meaning it, because if you send it without believing it, the strength weakens. You must carry the conviction that you truly have learned, that you truly will never accept the same treatment again. That conviction transforms the words from a line of text into a declaration of self-worth. And make no mistake, they will remember it. In quiet moments, long after the noise of their distractions has faded, those words will rise again. Thank you for teaching me what I will never accept again. Each time they remember it, regret sharpens. Because the human mind cannot escape a message that turns its own actions into a lesson for someone else's growth. They will know they gave you pain, but they will also know they gave you clarity. And clarity means you have no reason to return. That is the moment regret becomes real. Not when they see your tears, not when they hear your anger, but when they realize their actions turned you into someone stronger, someone they can no longer reach. And all they are left with is the emptiness of what they lost. So understand this, the one text that makes them regret hurting you is not about revenge. It is not about getting them back. It is about closing the chapter with power, clarity, and peace. It is about walking away knowing you did not lose. You learn. And that lesson will stay with you forever, while the regret will stay with them. The text you send is short, simple, and calm, yet it carries more weight than any argument because it speaks directly to the deepest parts of the human mind. To understand why it works, you must first understand how the psychology of loss, pride, and regret are connected. The human brain is wired to protect the ego. When someone hurts you, they often do it from a place of pride. They convince themselves that you will always be there, no matter how they treat you. They believe your love, your patience, and your forgiveness are endless. That belief protects their ego because it allows them to think They can leave without losing anything. But the moment they read your words, calm, final, and dignified, that protective illusion shatters. Suddenly, they are confronted with a reality their ego was not prepared for. You are no longer under their control. This realization is what creates cognitive dissonance. Psychology describes it as the mental discomfort that happens when someone's actions clash with the truth they are forced to face. They told themselves a story where you were weak, dependent, and desperate. But your message tells a different story, that you are strong, self-respecting, and untouchable. This clash between their old belief and the new reality creates a storm inside their mind. And storms like this do not pass quickly. They linger, they echo, they keep returning until the truth can no longer be denied. Another reason this works is because it reframes the pain. Normally, when someone hurts you, they expect you to carry the wound like a burden. They expect to see you broken, holding on to the hurt they caused. But your message transforms that wound into wisdom. By saying, "Thank you for teaching me what I will never accept again," you shift the meaning of the pain. It is no longer a sign of weakness. It is proof of growth. And nothing creates regret more than realizing that their betrayal became your stepping stone to strength. Think about how the brain processes memory. People do not just remember events, they remember the meaning attached to them. If the meaning of what happened is that you are broken, they feel no regret. But if the meaning is that their actions built your strength, the memory turns into a source of discomfort. Each time they recall it, they are reminded not of your weakness, but of your power. That is what haunts them. The simplicity of the message is another reason it works so powerfully. Long explanations give the mind room to argue, to dismiss, to defend, but short, sharp sentences bypass defense. They sink in quickly before the ego has time to reject them. This is why the most unforgettable lines in history are always brief. The brain holds onto them because there is no excess, no distraction, only clarity. And clarity pierces deeper than noise. There is also a principle in psychology called the Zeigarnik effect. It states that the human mind remembers unfinished stories more vividly than finished ones. Your text creates this effect. By keeping it short, you leave no room for conversation. You do not explain, you do not argue, you do not continue. You finish your part of the story, but you leave them with an unfinished thought. What if I hadn't treated them that way? What if I hadn't lost them? That unanswered question repeats endlessly because the story feels incomplete. That repetition strengthens the regret. Another psychological trigger is respect. People are wired to respect strength even when they don't want to. They may not admit it, they may try to dismiss it, but deep down, respect for dignity is automatic. When you send a message without anger, without desperation, without chaos, you show composure, and composure commands respect. They may not tell you they respect you. They may never say it out loud, but their regret is proof that they do. It also works because it denies them control. Regret is strongest when someone realizes they cannot change the outcome. If you leave the door open, regret fades. But when you send a message that clearly ends the story, their power to rewrite it disappears. They are left helpless, knowing that the chapter is closed forever. That helplessness is what makes regret unbearable. But perhaps the most important reason this works is because it protects you. It shifts the focus from revenge to growth. Revenge might feel satisfying for a moment, but it leaves you tied to the same cycle of pain. Growth, on the other hand, frees you. By reframing the betrayal as a lesson, you turn what was meant to destroy you into something that builds you. And that is the kind of power no one can take away. So when they read your message, they do not just see words. They see a reflection of everything they lost. They see proof that while they stayed the same, you evolved. They see that their choices shaped you into someone they can no longer reach. And that realization is the seed of regret that will never stop growing. This is why one short text spoken with calm strength works where anger and explanation fail, because it is not just words on a screen. It is psychology. It is the human mind facing a truth it cannot escape. And once that truth takes hold, regret is no longer a possibility. It is a guarantee. It is true that the right words can leave a mark. And it is true that silence can echo louder than any argument. But the real victory is not in making them regret. The real victory is in healing yourself, because regret is their burden to carry, but healing is yours. And if you focus only on their regret, you remain chained to the very pain you are trying to escape. True strength begins the moment you decide your healing comes first. Human beings often confuse closure with revenge. They think that if the person who hurt them feels pain, then their own pain will disappear. But psychology shows us that external outcomes rarely heal internal wounds. Someone else's regret cannot repair your heart, even if they suffer, even if they miss you. It does not remove the scars they left behind. Healing is not about them. It is about you reclaiming your peace. Healing starts with acceptance, not acceptance of what they did, but acceptance of the reality that it happened. Many people stay stuck because they keep replaying the past, asking, what if, or why me? But every replay ties you tighter to the hurt. The mind cannot heal while it is busy reliving the same story. Acceptance frees you. It allows you to say, yes, it happened. Yes, it hurt, but no, it will not control me anymore. That shift is the first step toward true freedom. The next part of healing is reclaiming your worth. When someone hurts you, it can feel like they stole a piece of your identity. You might find yourself questioning your value, doubting your place in the world, wondering if you will ever be enough for anyone. But the truth is, your worth was never theirs to define. Your worth is not measured by the love someone failed to give you. It is measured by the love you choose to give yourself. Self-respect is the foundation of healing. When you remind yourself daily that you deserve better, the wound begins to close. Healing also means setting boundaries. Without boundaries, pain repeats itself. You must decide clearly what you will and will not accept in your life. Every no you say to disrespect is a yes to your own peace. Boundaries are not walls to keep love out. They are gates to protect your heart. And the more you honor your boundaries, the stronger you become. Psychology teaches us that people who live with strong boundaries experience higher self-esteem and less regret because they know that their value is not negotiable. But healing is not only about saying no, it is also about saying yes. Yes to new growth, yes to new opportunities, yes to a life beyond the pain. Too often, people wait for the day they feel no pain before they move forward. But waiting keeps you stuck. Healing does not mean the pain disappears overnight. It means you learn to walk forward even with the pain, step by step, moment by moment, until the weight begins to fade. Forgiveness is another part of healing, but it is often misunderstood. Forgiveness does not mean excusing what they did. It does not mean letting them back into your life. Forgiveness means releasing the grip the memory has on you. It is not about them. It is about freeing yourself. When you hold on to bitterness, you carry the chains of their actions. When you forgive, you cut the chains and walk forward lighter. Forgiveness is not for their peace, it is for yours. Healing also requires focus on the future. If you keep staring at the door that closed, you will never see the doors that are opening. Pain has a way of narrowing your vision, making you believe that nothing good lies ahead. But the truth is, every ending creates space for a new beginning. Your future is not defined by the person who hurt you. Your future is defined by the strength you are building right now. And that strength will lead you to people who value you, respect you, and love you the way you deserve. And here is the most powerful truth. Healing makes you untouchable. The same actions that once would have broken you will no longer affect you in the same way. You become wiser, stronger, more resilient. You learn to recognize red flags faster. You learn to trust yourself more deeply. You learn to rise, not because life spared you from pain, but because you faced pain and overcame it. That transformation is the greatest proof of your power. So while they may carry regret, your focus must remain on your healing, because their regret belongs to them. It does nothing for your peace. Your healing, however, belongs to you. And once you choose it, once you place your peace above their punishment, you will realize you already won. You did not just survive, you became unbreakable. Healing is the beginning, but it is not the end. Once you begin to release the pain, a new question rises: who am I now? This is where rebuilding your inner power begins, because the strongest version of you does not come from a life without wounds. The strongest version of you is built from the ashes of what tried to break you. Rebuilding power starts with identity. When you were hurt, a part of your identity may have been tied to the person who caused you pain. You saw yourself through their eyes, through their approval, through their treatment of you. But now you must reclaim the pen and rewrite your story. You are not defined by their betrayal. You are not defined by the role you played in their life. You are defined by the strength you choose to carry forward. Psychology shows that humans thrive when they create meaning from their struggles. Pain without purpose drains us, but pain transformed into purpose fuels us. Ask yourself, what did this experience teach me about myself? What strength did I discover that I never knew I had? Every time you answer those questions, you rebuild another layer of your power, because power is not about never falling. It is about discovering that you can rise no matter how many times life tries to push you down. The next step in rebuilding power is discipline. Pain has a way of scattering focus, of making you feel lost and empty. Discipline gathers you back together. It reminds you that you are not powerless. You are not drifting. You can choose your direction. Start small, or commit to habits that restore you. It could be movement, writing, meditation, learning, or building a skill. Every small act of discipline whispers to your mind, I am in control again. That whisper, repeated daily, becomes an unshakable roar of confidence. Another way to rebuild power is through self-respect. Respect is not just how others treat you, it is how you treat yourself. Do you speak to yourself with kindness? Do you honor your boundaries? Do you chase people who disrespect you? Or do you walk away knowing your value? Every act of self-respect strengthens your inner foundation. And once your foundation is solid, no betrayal can collapse it again. Rebuilding also requires courage. Courage does not mean you feel no fear. Courage means you move forward despite fear. The person who hurt you may have left scars that make you afraid to trust again, afraid to open your heart, afraid to dream big. But remember this, courage is not the absence of fear. It is the decision that fear will not decide your future. Each time you choose courage over fear, your power grows. There is also great strength in perspective. When betrayal happens, it feels like the end of the world. But over time, perspective reminds you that it was not the end. It was the turning point. What feels like destruction often becomes construction. The life you are building now would not have existed if you had not walked through the fire. That is not to say the pain was good, but it is to say you were strong enough to turn it into something good. That perspective is a superpower. Another layer of power is found in gratitude. Not gratitude for the betrayal itself, but gratitude for what you discovered because of it. Gratitude shifts your mind from scarcity to abundance. It says, yes, I was hurt, but I also found strength. Yes, I was betrayed, but I also found clarity. Yes, I lost something, but I also gained myself. Gratitude rewires the brain to focus not only on what was taken, but on what remains and what can still grow. And when your mind learns to see abundance instead of lack, your power becomes unstoppable. Most importantly, rebuilding power means stepping into your future with intention. Too often, people let pain keep them living in the shadows of their past, but power is found in vision. Close your eyes and imagine the life you want. The peace, the love, the success, the joy. Do not wait for it to come by chance. Build it. Every vision needs action. Every dream needs movement. And when you start creating instead of waiting, you realize the betrayal did not end your story. It opened a new chapter, one written by your own hands. And here is the truth that ties it all together. Rebuilding your inner power is not about proving them wrong. It is about proving yourself right, proving that you are stronger than the pain, proving that you are worthy of respect and love, proving that no wound, no rejection, no betrayal has the power to erase your value. When you rebuild with that mindset, you do not just recover. You rise higher than you were before. So as you walk this path, remember this, the goal is not just to survive, the goal is to rise. The goal is to step out of the storm, not weaker, but wiser, not broken, but rebuilt, not empty, but overflowing with strength. That is the essence of rebuilding your inner power. And once you hold that power within you, no one can ever take it away again. When you have healed, when you have rebuilt your strength, when you have learned that your worth is untouchable, something powerful happens. The final message you send is not with words on a screen. It is not a paragraph of anger or a sentence of revenge. The final message is your life itself. A life lived with dignity, peace, and confidence is the one thing they never expected. And that life becomes the message that echoes louder than any text you could ever write. Think about it. Regret does not come when they see your pain. Regret comes when they see your growth. Human psychology teaches us that people begin to regret when they realize what they lost is now out of reach. When they notice you no longer chase them. When they see you living with strength they cannot touch. That is when their mind replays their choices. That is when they feel the weight of what they destroyed. The moment you stop trying to prove anything to them, their own mind begins proving everything for you. This is why silence is more powerful than reaction. Reaction keeps you tied to their story. Silence writes a new one. When you stop sending desperate messages, when you stop begging for answers, when you stop explaining your worth, you send the clearest message of all, I don't need you anymore. And that is the message no one forgets, because the human mind craves importance. When they realize they no longer have power over your emotions, their importance fades. And with it, regret begins to burn. But the deepest regret comes when they see your transformation. Imagine the one who broke you watching you rise into a stronger, wiser, and freer version of yourself. Imagine them seeing you laugh again, dream again, shine again, not because of them, but despite them. That is the moment they understand. They didn't just lose you, they lost the chance to stand beside the person you became. That realization cuts deeper than any text could. And here is the truth. The final text that makes them regret is not made of words. It is made of silence, self-respect, and success. If you ever choose to send words, let them be few, calm, and filled with dignity. A single sentence like, I wish you well, but I've moved on, carries more weight than pages of anger. Why? Because calmness shows strength. Anger shows attachment. Calmness shows healing. And when they feel that calmness, they know they no longer matter the way they once did. Nothing creates regret faster than realizing someone's peace no longer includes you. But beyond messages, beyond silence, beyond words, the most powerful move you can make is living a life that proves you rose higher. Success is not just wealth or status. It is peace of mind, strong boundaries, meaningful relationships, and a vision for your future. When you live like this, your presence itself becomes the reminder of what they lost. They cannot escape the memory because every version of you that thrives is proof of what they threw away. And here lies the greatest twist. The moment you stop caring about whether they regret is the exact moment they begin to regret. Psychology calls this the withdrawal effect. When attention is removed, the human brain panics. What was once available is suddenly gone. And the more they realize they cannot reach you, the more their mind obsesses over what they let go. Your absence becomes the loudest message they will ever hear. So remember this, your final message is not about punishing them. It is about freeing yourself. It is about stepping into a life so full, so powerful, so bright that their regret is simply a shadow following them. You will not need to say a word. Your strength will speak for you. Your peace will speak for you. Your success will speak for you. And their regret will not be your victory. It will simply be the natural consequence of their actions, because the greatest revenge has never been revenge at all. The greatest revenge is healing so deeply that their memory no longer controls you. It is becoming so whole that their betrayal feels small compared to the greatness you built from it. It is living with so much light that their darkness has no place in your story anymore. That is the message that endures. That is the message that makes them regret forever. So rise higher, live fuller, choose peace over pain, self-respect over bitterness, growth over revenge. Because the most powerful text, the one that makes them regret more than anything else, is the message of a life that moved forward without them. And that message is permanent.